I am a 27-year-old entrepreneur named Mirabelle. I make and sell clothing out of my store. I've always wanted to be self-sufficient and pursue my passions. I design the majority of my clothing since I am passionate about what I do. In my workshop, I also have employees working for me. Frederick, a software engineer, and I are married. His age is 27. I've been married to my spouse for 5 years. We've been friends since our time in college. When we were in school, we were friends first. That year, I ran across Frederick at one of the yearly school functions. We had a common vibe from the beginning, almost like we were buddies. Frederick, though, was more eager to learn more about me. After a while, we went out and started dating. We completed a great deal of schoolwork and exam preparation together. We attended concerts and school parties together as high school sweethearts, and we enjoyed ourselves while in class. Frederick was a man of accountability. One of the things I adored about him was how cautious he was whenever we went to those gatherings. He is so sweet and compassionate. Those who had known him in school adored him for his coordination and his serious approach to his academics. My pals' social circle was quite large. A few of them were in relationships. I was an extension, and so was Frederick. In addition to hanging together, we all studied our books. We all received our college degrees 1 year later. Then, Frederick and I made the decision to go to Virginia, the home state of our family. He then proceeded to introduce me to his entire family and circle of acquaintances. He invited me over for supper with his family on a few occasions. Frederick, his sister, and his parents made up the family of 4. I happened to have the same name as Frederick's mother, and we had a lot in common. Frederick's folks made me feel quite welcome. I learned more about every single one of them. Frederick was particularly protective of his sister, Leah, because he was the only child in the family. Frederick never cracked jokes about anything related to Leah. Like Frederick, Leah had a good heart as well. Gladys, their mother, was equally kind to me. She didn't offer me any reason to be unhappy. Instead, she treated me like her second daughter. Whenever I visited, she always made sure I was comfortable. Frederick's father was no different. They all acted as though I had known them for ages. Frederick was also introduced to my family by me. They also had affection for Frederick. Like Frederick, I come from a family of 4 and have 1 sibling. My brother, Jason, is my brother. Because Jason is more to me than just a brother, I adore him. Together, we shared everything and created memories. We acted as if we were best friends. Between Frederick and me, everything happened extremely quickly. Our families got together for dinner dates on multiple times. Our families were supportive of our union, and we were like the ideal couple. Finding someone who loved me without conditions made me joyful. I had a bad dating history before meeting Frederick. The majority of the guys I had met were just out to have fun. Frederick, though, was unique. I was smitten by the way he observed every nuance of who I was. As Frederick's girlfriend, I was overjoyed. Frederick asked me to marry him a few months after I graduated from college, and I happily accepted because I was in love with him. The wedding was planned by our families. They took care of everything and carried out the necessary tasks. That our family supported us made me joyful. When the wedding day finally arrived, we exchanged vows. There were friends and family present. It was a low-key wedding with no controversy at all. Everything went off without a hitch. After the ceremony, everyone left to head back to their separate locations. Our new home is a few kilometers from our parents' place, where Frederick and I moved. As a recently married couple, we began a new life together. I like living with Frederick. Our marriage was blissful for a few months. We carried on with all of our single activities. In addition to going out together, we attended a lot of family events. Frederick found employment and labored to support us. Soon after he started working, I made the decision to follow my passion and founded a clothes business. Sewing and creating my own garments has always been a love of mine. Everything was going smoothly, and my store was moving quite quickly. Every week, I get a lot of orders. The amount of work was too much for me to handle alone, so I hired other employees to assist me in the store. I also had several employees that were skilled at designing and sewing men's clothing. My store quickly became a unisex store. My spouse additionally assisted me in organizing my store. He also provided me with a great deal of exposure and assistance with my marketing plan. What appeared to be a modest enterprise expanded into a fully fledged 1. I dressed my spouse and his coworkers for their jobs. I made several for my friends and family as well. Everyone offered what little assistance they could to my firm. A few months after I launched my business, Diana, a friend from college, was getting married. I was overjoyed, but even more so when she awarded me the commission to create the attire for her bridal train. I spent a lot of time working on it because it was a big contract. Every girl in the bridal train was stunning, and they all thought their clothes were adorable. After the event, a few of them even showed me favoritism. My spouse continued to assist me in expanding my audience. Frederick took the time to make sure I was comfortable doing my work and was very encouraging. Yes, folks, Frederick was employed as a software developer at his own place of business. He always returns early from work because he didn't have much time to devote to his task. Because of the kind of orders I do receive, I have occasionally been the one to remain out late at night. In addition to meeting with them, I have to make sure that my clients are happy. Additionally, Frederick was typically the one to prepare our meals and take care of household chores. My spouse would occasionally phone to check on me if I didn't return home by the early hour and wait for me to return so we could share a bedtime. I have spent a week or longer working away from home on occasion. My spouse was aware of the nature of my work, therefore he never voiced any complaints. My husband contacted me one day when I was at work, telling me to come home early so we could have dinner at our house. We stopped the call after I informed him I would try to end the call early, to which he agreed. I told him I would keep my word and organized everything for that day. Regretfully, a customer entered the store just as I was ready to close and stated he needed a shirt designed. Even though the face was unfamiliar, it was really attractive. I quickly declined, not wanting to let my spouse down. However, he persisted and begged me to assist him since the following day he had an event to attend. We were going to eat dinner at 8 p.m. then he arrived at 7 p.m. Since I had an hour or so before the dinner date, I consented. All of my employees had already left work when he arrived. To give them time to recuperate that day, I dismissed them early. I pulled the store open again and let him in. I followed him as he made his way through the entire area. He complimented my efforts and seemed satisfied with what he saw. A few minutes later, he approached me and indicated the style he was looking for. I pulled out the fabric and got to work. We had a little conversation before introducing ourselves. He held out his hand for a handshake and identified himself as Derek. After shaking hands, I identified myself as Gladys. He continued, saying that I lived in a lovely place. The compliment made me pleased, and I thanked Derek. Derek informed me about his job and his recent relocation to our town for it. He was talking about a bunch of different things as I was working on his clothes. He spoke with me as though we had been friends for a long time. Derek and I were meeting for the first time at this time. I became so fatigued that I stopped paying attention to him at one point. He was lost in the discussion. I was backed up with work, so I kept checking the time to see whether I could make it home in time to see my spouse. I attempted to apologize in advance by calling Frederick, but at that point his lines were unreachable. I was stuck in my work and didn't want to let Derek down because I was already working on the fabric. Since he was a new client, I didn't want to give him any grounds for dissatisfaction. I completed the assignment 2 hours later. Derek accepted it from me, but he insisted on trying it there just in case there was a change. I showed him a place to change into. I hastily gathered my belongings and prepared to depart as soon as he entered the room. A few minutes afterwards, he emerged. I expressed my happiness with the garment and my handiwork. To be honest, guys, he looked classy in that dress. He turned around and changed back into his regular attire. After I gave him the details of my account, he sent the money and paid me extra for being slow. I told Derek I could handle it when he offered to take me home. Derek gave me his private card and instructed me to call him in case I needed anything before he left. Though initially hesitant, I did manage to gather it. In addition, he drove off after promising to return after the event he intended to attend. I was overjoyed to fulfill his order and receive an additional gratuity. Guys, guess what happened when I looked at my phone to see what time it was? It was 10 o'clock at night. I was taken aback. Frederick had taken the time to make dinner for the two of us, and I felt horrible about it. Before I could hail a cab, I had to wait for a long. I tried my husband's lines several times on the way home, but he was unreachable. I never stopped hoping that he wouldn't be upset with me for breaking my word. I paid the cab driver when I arrived at my destination. I went to knock on the door. After knocking for a time without getting a response, I used my extra key to open the door. When I opened the door, my spouse was soundly asleep. It seems like he was waiting for me, I pondered. When I got to the dining room table, I noticed that Frederick had made us many meals. Since I couldn't get him to wake up, I went to get dressed for bed. Folks, I was depressed. I promised to make it up to him and apologized to him the following morning. I could see by the expression on his face that he was furious about it but decided to overlook it. I went right away and got ready for him that day. After I prepared breakfast for us, we left for our jobs. When I arrived at my store, I noticed that my employees had already begun working. I was rather happy with them. They didn't give me any cause for complaint because they were highly diligent. A few weeks later, Derek returned to my shop. He informed me about the compliments he received on the dress I had prepared for him. After that, Derek and I grew close. He frequently stopped by my shop to chat with me or get his clothing ironed. We spent a few evenings together, ranging from movie evenings to coffee dates, outside my business. We kept our private lives to ourselves, or rather, I kept my relationship status from Derek a secret. He never inquired as to my sexual orientation. I was just enjoying myself at the time, so I didn't feel the need to notify him. However, Derek disclosed to me that he recently ended a bad relationship. I felt horrible for him at the time since he was such a nice guy and shouldn't have been heartbroken by a woman. Guys, I kept my marital status a secret from Derek. We continued to go out together. I made sure that nobody on my staff knew about our relationship. We continued to get together for hangouts at hidden locations. Derek was skilled at putting a woman at ease. He brought me to a lot of concerts and bought me a lot of stuff. Because of my demanding work schedules, I had forgotten how much I enjoyed attending parties until I met Derek. However, Derek would often tell me to work less and have more fun. He said, "That's why I hired staff, their job is to take care of my workload." I went out with him after, agreeing with him and leaving my staff to finish the work. Neither my husband nor Derek were aware of my extramarital encounters. I was just taking time off from work at the time, and there wasn't anything significant going on between Derek and me, so I didn't see the need to notify him. A few months into our relationship, Derek asked if we might take trips outside of the city to visit sites. I told him to allow me some time to consider it, but he insisted that accepting the offer would be fun. That same day, after work, Frederick and I sat down to watch TV together on the couch. After exchanging pleasantries, I went to the restroom to get dressed. After a few minutes, I descended and headed for dinner. Frederick contacted me after dinner to say he needed to talk to me about something. I was about to walk upstairs. I asked him what it was, nodding as I sat down. He inquired, looking at me, if I was hiding anything from him and if everything was all right. I didn't know what he meant by that at the time, so I was perplexed. I reassured him that everything would be all right, so he stopped worrying. When I tried to ask him why, he told me he was done with me. I told him right away since I was irritated with his response. Frederick had lost his cool before I could make sense of what was happening. I was shouted at by him and told to go out. I stormed out and went to bed. After a few minutes, I had moved past the situation involving my spouse and me. My mind wandered to Derek, and happiness returned. I fell asleep with him on my mind. I decided the following morning that I was taking the excursion Derek had offered. I informed my spouse that I would be returning in 3 days due to a business trip out of town. When he said yes, I headed over to Derek's place. It wouldn't seem suspicious because I didn't bring much. We were about to relocate when I went to his place, but he received a call from someone. I didn't bother questioning him since I didn't know who it was. A few minutes afterwards, he approached me and informed me of the events that had transpired. When I asked him what it was, he didn't provide me much information. He explained to me that he required some cash to clear up some issues. He requested me to lend him some money and said he would reimburse me as soon as he received it. Since it was the first time he had asked me for money, I consented since I knew he could repay me. I informed him that I would make the necessary arrangements in an hour. We had to postpone our trip, so I returned to my store. I wanted to hang out with Derek outside of our town, so I was upset. I made some calculations at my office before calling Derek to give his information. I sent him the money a few minutes later. He thanked me over the phone. I got to work with my staff after sorting through a few orders. I gave Derek a call a few days later to get his response. Since the last time I sent him the money, I haven't heard from him. I wanted to know if he was all right with me. When he answered the phone, I inquired about everything being all right. He replied that he would visit me in a few minutes. Upon terminating our conversation, my spouse entered my establishment. It had been a long since he visited me at the store, so I wasn't prepared for him. Frederick entered the room dejectedly. When I asked him what had happened, he explained that he had an emergency at work and needed money. He clarified that he is in danger of losing his job because someone messed with the numbers at his office. It hadn't been long since I'd given Derek money, so while I felt bad for him, I was also powerless. I made some plans to support my husband since I didn't want him to lose his job, but I refrained from telling him because I knew he would be furious with me. I managed to think of anything, and I gave my hubby the cash. I asked him to keep me informed about developments at his office. He contacted me shortly after leaving to assure me that he will get back to me. Derek arrived not long after my husband departed. When I questioned him about what had occurred a few days prior, he appeared to be in good standing. He assured me that my money would be returned to me in a few days, so I shouldn't worry. I knew Derek would reimburse me, so I didn't hesitate to do it. All right, gentlemen, I had planned to close my store when Derek left. The time was 5 p.m. that day, and I was eager to return home early to learn more about Frederick's workplace's mishap. I got in my car and opened the door right away. As soon as I walked inside, I saw a piece of paper on the center table. I didn't notice it because I assumed my spouse might have left it there. I got dressed and walked upstairs. After a few minutes, I walked downstairs to give Frederick a call. I called him repeatedly but got no answer. To check if everything was all right, I texted him, but he didn't answer my messages or my calls. I was so hungry at the moment that I went to the kitchen and made myself something to eat. After eating, I made the decision to watch some movies. When I noticed the white piece of paper, I considered opening it to find out what was on it. Guys, guess what? Guys, it wasn't just any old piece of paper. It was an update on divorce documents. Frederick issued me with divorce papers, gentlemen. He signed the documents, folded them, and put them where I could see them. My husband had written a note and it was attached to the divorce papers. Frederick said in the note that he was aware of my adultery but pretended not to know. Guys, my spouse added that he knew Derek as well. They were employed by the same company. When I chose to play both of them and play with their emotions, they banded together to con me out of my money. Along with telling me not to bother phoning or even seeking for him, my husband also said in the letter that he had signed the divorce papers and had left town with the money he and Derek had conned me out of. I stumbled to my knees while reading the letter and didn't realize it. I sobbed deeply. The harshest revenge had been exacted on me by my husband. Because of such revenge, my life had been destroyed. I handed Derek and my husband money that came from my business. I had no idea what to do. Both of their lines were unreachable when I tried to phone them. I spent the entire evening there. Update, everyone, my husband's divorce was finalized 1 month ago. Attempts to contact him were unsuccessful. He had barred me on all social media sites and had blocked my lines, I found out. I guess that's how I found out that my husband and Derek worked together. My spouse narrated the entire story to me a few days ago. It was during the period that Derek and I were getting to know one another that Derek was just transferred to my husband's place of employment. All he told me was that he had moved in recently due to employment. I was too lazy to ask what kind of work he was doing. However, after observing Derek visit me at my store a few times, my husband made the decision to accompany us everywhere we went. Telling Derek he was going out with his wife over the phone. I didn't disclose my marriage to Derek, he was unaware of it. He mentioned robbing me because he was so furious. Right now, I'm at a loss on what to do. My company is failing. I haven't been able to satisfy all of the consumers who bought designs, thus they are all asking for refunds. I've spent all the money I had, thus I owe a ton of money right now. The majority of my belongings have been sold, and the costs appear to be mounting. When I tried to call Derek, my lines were already blocked. My spouse doesn't even have plans to meet me, and he didn't give back the money I gave him. I cheated on my spouse with a complete stranger, which was a huge mistake. Derek defrauded me of my money and fled. I made a huge mistake. Guys, here is my tale. I'm going to miss you.